Good evening and welcome. I think it's easy to hear, but I'll use the microphone anyway so that everyone can hear. And if you want to move up, you can. If you want to stay where you are, that's great too. My name is Dr. Greg Gilligan. I'm a really proud superintendent of schools here in North Andover. And I'm going to introduce a few folks tonight, so to get started. First and foremost, the town manager, Melissa Rodriguez, is here. We meet weekly, and it's been awesome to work together a couple years. We have the Director of Administrative Services at the town, Lori Burzlaff. All right. School committee members. Dr. Mealy. We've got Andrew McDevitt here, the chair. Yeah, well, Markham present. And I don't know if Helen is here. I know Helen.
She's supposed to be coming.
She was coming, absolutely. Franklin Principal Joe Clark.
Yay.
The representative on the subcommittee, Michael Liss. Thank you, Michael. And I'll turn it over in a couple minutes to Dr. Mealy. Thanks for coming out tonight. This is very, very important work that we're undertaking, and started last spring with the subcommittee work. These are incredibly important projects for our town and our schools. To make a difference in our schools, not only with class size, but to provide equity and the best spaces for kids to learn in 21st century style. When many of our schools were designed, they just weren't designed to have OT, PT, speech, EL. You know, they were designed many years ago, and it's kind of hard to think about some of our schools being 71 years old and 64 years old. Even the newest schools are 24 years old. So when you start to think of it that way, it's incredible. So this is really important work. We want to make the community aware of what our needs are, you know, what are the next steps, and I would like to, at this time, turn it over to Dr. Mealy. Dr. Mealy.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for being here this evening. We're here to talk about the Facilities Master Plan, the second phase. If you're not aware, we had phase one, which is just finishing up with the senior center, if you've been over to where the Knights of Columbus used to be, and it's a lot of work going on over there. That's going to be the new senior center. That's the last project of the first stage of the master plan, and that included the Kittredge gym, the town hall renovation, school administration building, DPW renovation, fire station number 1, the Brad Street, where we added the kindergarten to the preschool, and the senior center, which is finishing up now. One thing I want to say, it's interesting, we've had people let us know that they think that we should have been out sooner getting information out to the public. We've been doing it since last year, if you don't know that. We've done surveys and we've done some public forums in the spring. We're doing these, and we're going to be doing more in the winter and in spring, fall, leading up to town meeting. And there are those who are saying, why are you doing anything now? Because people aren't engaged yet, and they will be come the new year. But we wanted to try to make sure we get as much information as possible. The focus of these meetings is to educate everyone on what these projects include, what they're going to have, what the schools will have as part of these projects. And then the second phase after the new year will be focused on how is this plan going to work? What's the timeline for these projects? What's the funding for these projects? And part of the reason for that is we just found out recently that the Kittredge was accepted into the next phase of the MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority, has a program every year where they help fund projects, large school projects. Kittredge is the biggest cost item in this plan. It was the one we put as the #1 priority because of that. And if it is approved, it changes everything. It really allows us, and the town manager has spoken to this a few times now, to fund a lot of these projects with the debt that's falling off for the high school and some other projects, and really makes these a possibility. So we had a meeting with them on Monday, and we have a school tour with them, which is part of their process, on Thursday. Then they go to the next phase and let you know if they're going to invite you in to do a feasibility study and then final decision on whether or not you're going to be part of the program. So we're working our best to try to make that happen, and it would really help with all of these projects. So what are the projects that we're talking about? Did I skip it? Went too fast. There it is. So obviously Franklin is one of them. It's an older school like Kittredge and Atkinson. Needs renovations, needs some additions in order to impact class size and accommodate future growth. Kittredge Elementary, the North Andover Middle School is in the same situation, overcrowded, one of the largest middle schools in the area with the largest class sizes. In the Bradstreet, although it's fairly new, we had to cut down on the size of the gym, and it was actually cut down too much. It's not a sufficient size gym for that school. So we would propose adding a larger gym to that school. And also this facilities master plan includes additions that are needed at the second fire station at where Johnson and Salem streets meet. And at the same area where the youth center is, the youth center has some additions as well. So for the schools, what that means is we have to renovate these older schools. We have to ensure equity. If you go to Sargent was built in the 90s, as was Thompson. Sargent is a good example in our district of a school that has what a 21st century school should have for space. And it has all the support spaces that you would need. It has a sufficient sized gym and cafeteria, art room, music room, and so on. We want all of our schools to have that. So there's equity across the district. We want to be able to impact class size. The school committee has been adamant about the class size goals and trying to move towards those of 20 students per elementary class. And this would allow us to do that, as well as accommodate any growth that we see. And we'll talk about enrollment projections in a few slides. And then eliminate portable classrooms. If you're familiar with Franklin, you know there's 3 portable classrooms right now that are well past what they were meant to last. And Atkinson has a couple, so in total we have 5 across the district that we'll be able to finally retire and put in some better space.
Dr. Mealy.
Yep.
Can I just ask, how many people here are parents or guardians of Franklin students now? Okay. And did any of you go to Franklin School? Okay. Last night at Atkinson, we had someone who had started at Atkinson in the 80s when they put the temporary in that was going to be there for 10 years. Okay. So Dr. Gilligan did some introductions earlier. I also was remiss in not introducing. We have Al Crevis and Bill Peters, who are 2 of the 3 consultants from the Mount Vernon group that have been working with us throughout this project and will continue to work with us in the Facilities Master Plan Committee as we move through these. So what we were looking to do is do the renovations that are needed. The mechanical systems are, in most cases of the 3 buildings, 3 elementary schools, we're talking about original and need to be modernized. They need to be brought up to modern code. You'll hear the term grandfathered. It's not a good thing. It just means that you don't have to change something to meet the code until you actually do some major renovations. So you're not going to be held accountable until then. And that's the case for some of our ADA requirements, some of our building code requirements, and a fire suppression system. Franklin and Atkinson do not have those because they were built when they weren't required. But we would take this opportunity to have those installed as well. And we want to improve the environment to be more conducive to learning. There's a lot of spaces. Principal Clark can attest to the fact that we've been squeezing as much as we can, converting rooms that were not meant to be teaching spaces into education spaces. And we want the ability to improve air quality. Now, we've done the air quality testing. Last year we did it again this year. We meet standards, but it could be better if the system allowed it. Our systems are older and do not accommodate the more efficient filters. It will burn out the system, so we're not able to go to the next level filter because of that, and this would allow us to do so.
As far as equity goes, we want for all of our schools that they should have the space to allow for growth, space to impact class size, have the space for appropriate support spaces, specialist spaces, and an environment conducive to learning. So what does that mean here at Franklin? From the picture you can see the overhead view, built in 1958, extended in 67, 80s, sometime in the 80s is when the portables went in. The exterior is in mostly good condition, interiors are fair to poor, and this comes right from what the first thing we did was we had the Mount Vernon group come in and do building assessments. Very thorough building assessments that if you haven't seen it yet, if you go on the North Andover website, school district website, and you click on the school committee, under school committee you'll find a link to school capacity, school space capacity subcommittee. If you click on that, there's all the information that we've generated. Michael was a part of the subcommittee. We had a representative from each school. We had Holly Vitsky Lynch is a member of the school committee. She was the chair of the subcommittee. We've generated a final report, which was the recommendation we're talking about now. The assessments are there. You can go through them. They're in detail of what our schools, what condition they're in and what they need. Among other, the enrollment projection information, the research that was done, all of that is there for you to see. So again,
the mobile app is right on the front page.
what's that?
If you're on the mobile app, it's right on the front page.
There you go, right on the front page.
And it's also on the front page on my Twitter account. There's 2 links there. One to the forum dates and one to the page, so.
No excuses for not finding it. So we need to meet requirements for ADA and other modern codes. Our systems, steam boilers should be replaced with hot water, be much more effective and efficient. The piping is over 50 years old. We're always repairing that. The electrical is mostly original and in fair to poor condition, and as I had mentioned, no fire suppression system.
It's a fun combination.
Exactly. So just some pictures that you will see. There's a lot more of them as part of the assessments that are online, but just some examples: non-ADA entrance, exit, non-ADA fixtures, original doors and non-ADA hardware and clearances, original VAT flooring, which we'd have to mitigate and replace, and the outdated electrical components. And then the other projects include Atkinson, which was built in 1964 as the middle school at the time, which is interesting because what that means is because it was built for a middle school, the cafeteria and the gym are actually sufficiently sized. Franklin, that gym is not sufficiently sized. We need a new gym at Franklin. And that is part of the recommendation. But they have the similar situation. Their flat roof, which these areas in here are the flat roof, are failing. The interiors are about the same condition. Everything else is about the same. They don't have the fire suppression system, but they also have a lift that's inadequate to meet ADA requirements. They didn't put an elevator in at the time. It's 2 floors. This one doesn't need it because it's only the 1 level, and the proposal is to remain 1 level. But Atkinson would need an elevator put in. And some pictures there, you can see the roof bubbling up, cracking, pooling water, and there's the lift right there. Wrong button. Right there. That would be replaced with an elevator, and same with the electrical original that needs to be modernized. One of the things, I think I skipped this on Franklin. There it is. One of the things that we did, if you look at the final report, is what we call a space analysis. And while we might say we have a PT room, for instance, at Franklin, it doesn't meet even close to the standard of what is recommended by the Mass School Building Authority. So what we have here are our actuals and the rooms that we have or don't have and the square footage for those, and then what they should be. And that's what these projects would take care of. So for instance, art is about 500 square feet carved out of, from the library, I guess, right? when it should be about 1,000 square feet, so it's about half the size it should be. Music, 650, that's about half the size it should be. Reading, we don't have a reading room, which should be one that is 500 square feet. Cafe and kitchen actually are sufficiently sized for an elementary school. But the gym is not even close, not even close. The library media center is a nice one, and it's close to what's recommended for, and if you take back some of that space, then you get there. And the support spaces are not adequate. There are not enough of them, and they're not as large as they should be. Special education programs, the same. The nurse's office is about half of what it should be, and OTPT, as I mentioned, is 300 in total, and it should be about 800 square feet for those two spaces.
Dr. Mealy, there's
Yep.
one common theme throughout the elementary schools, especially with the space issues, is I think they've been resourceful over the years, but they have used every nook and cranny, every closet that has existed has been turned into space, typically to service students. So principals know the building well. They've done everything they can to even divide rooms to create extra space. And that's a theme you'll see throughout the space challenges, especially for appropriate learning for different students. So.
Many of our projects over the summer are actually converting space into something that can be used. Again, not nearly ideal, but better than nothing. So Atkinson, again, we went over that. We did the same thing with them. As I said, I just would highlight the cafe and kitchen and gym were built originally for a middle school, and so they're certainly adequate. The other spaces in Atkinson are not, though. And then Kittredge. Kittredge is our oldest and smallest elementary school. It was built in 1949. The white roof area, the 4 modular classrooms that were built in 2010, and the green roof, often referred to as the green monster, if you're driving 125, is the gym. Similarly, the exterior is in good to fair condition, bordering on poor. Interior is fair to poor. Needs all the same things that Franklin and Atkinson need. And the pictures, you can see it online as part of the assessments for Kittredge. And the same ideas. The one area there is the gym. And when we propose a new building at Kittredge, it's to connect to the existing gym because it's a great building. Then the North Andover Middle School, originally built as a high school in 1953, extended in 1962 and 1995. And some people say, why do we need to renovate that already? Well, as our students get older at each level, the wear and tear on the buildings are greater. So you see greater wear and tear on the middle school, and then even more so on a high school. So the exterior and interior are in good to fair condition there. It definitely needs to have some renovations that will help us meet the ADA requirements and the modern code. We do not have modern science labs. That's what we would add, which would free up space for other classrooms as well. Well, we'll get into that in a little bit. I'll show you where they propose each of these.
Simply put, folks, the middle school, anyone have a middle school student right now? Yeah, I do too. It's the class size, they're just huge classes. It's one of the biggest middle schools in Eastern Massachusetts, almost 1,100 students. It's just large class sizes, and they're out of space. So.
Yeah, I apologize if I didn't say that. You kind of forget what you said at the last one and what you haven't said yet in this one. But yeah, they're the biggest, one of the biggest, and with the largest class size. And the pictures that indicate the work that needs to be done there as well. So I talked about enrollment projections a little while ago. Michael was instrumental in analyzing. We had 2 individual separate consultants do enrollment projections for us because we were very sensitive to what had happened in the past. If anybody was around when they were talking about building a new elementary school, Foster Farm, they had enrollment projections that made it look like there was going to be 1,000 elementary students coming into the district in just a few short years. But what they did is they used a short window of increases that had occurred in those last 3 years or so and projected that slope to continue. It didn't. So what we did and what Michael did was looked at a 25-year period where you do see some peaks and valleys, but the general trend of that line over 25 years has been about 35 students per year. And that's what we saw when we looked at the 2 enrollment projections that we had done as well. The kind of median point for them was the same 35 per year. There has been a recent drop, and we actually have a meeting on Thursday evening with the school committee where we're showing this year's enrollment numbers that seems to be attributed to COVID, but we'll see how that plays out. But again, like I said, there have been peaks and valleys along the way. And here's that graphically. So you can see right here is that period of time. Right there is what they used to project a large increase in the coming years. And then you could see that that's not what happened. It actually went down a little bit and then started coming back up again. Now we're down during this last couple of years, and we anticipate with developments that we all have heard about coming online and the normal trend that we've seen kind of maintaining. You can't really see it too well, but there's a dotted line right here, which is the trend that we've seen over a long period of time for North Andover. And that's what we're building to. So, our recommendation, and this is based on, anyone here participate in the survey? Thank you very much for doing so. We had a great response to that. We had about 800 people respond, and we also did one separately for the staff, and had a great response from the staff as well. And it was clear, the results are in the final report. You can see how the community felt. They wanted to maintain the current grade distribution. And what that means is, don't do a upper and lower elementary school, upper and lower middle school. Keep the 1 to 5, the 6 to 8, and the 9 to 12. They also wanted to maintain the neighborhood schools. That's not surprising. But wanted to add capacity in order for us to address equity. That was an important aspect to the community. Provide support spaces, 21st century learning spaces, be able to impact class size, and account for enrollment growth. Also remove the portables, and be as fiscally responsible as possible because this is North Andover. So for Franklin, that means taking out those 3 portables, renovating the interior, including the cafeteria and the library. Even though those spaces are large enough, they need to be renovated. Renovating the exterior, including the roof and the paving. Upgrade electrical, the plumbing and the HVAC systems, install that fire suppression system, add 6 classrooms, 4 to 8 support spaces, and build a new gym. And then repurpose the existing. I mean, it's good space. It could be a couple classrooms or it could be some support spaces. So we're always asked, what could that possibly look like? This is the preliminary design, designed to scale, as Al was pointing out to me, that these are the classrooms and the support spaces. So it doesn't have to be this, but this is definitely a design that could work. You can see up here where that portable was, would be replaced, the gym would go there. And then we would add the support spaces and classrooms to the back of the building and connect the wings in the back, which if any of you are a child down, you go all the way down there and you have to go back and over to the next wing. So that's what it could look like. For Atkinson, again, pretty similar. It's only 2 portable classrooms that would be removed because that's all they have, but everything else is pretty much the same except for the installing of an elevator. And their addition could look like this, where you add a wing that would kind of mirror as you drive along the front of that building and is connected at both ends. Would be 2 levels just like this one is, and then you'd have the elevator that would access the 2nd floor. In Kittredge, we're proposing, again, that one is the oldest building in the worst condition. I remember when I first started here, during that conversation about Foster Farms, they were saying how bad Kittredge was back then. And here we are, almost 20 years later. It's not better. And it definitely needs, it not only is it the condition of the building, but the layout. It's a small building and it would be extremely difficult on that site to add to the building. There's room behind the gym to, see right here. This is a concept that's been proposed where here's the existing, so you could build off the gym and still utilize those modular classrooms. They're not very old at all. And then modular is not portable. It's just, it means it was built off-site and brought on. It's using the same kind of construction, but not done on-site. So you would maintain those and then build a new school around that. And then the middle school, this one is always interesting. People are like, where are you going to put anything on that site? And again, it would be to renovate both interior and exterior, upgrade all the systems, add 10 to 15 classroom/science labs, and add the support spaces that are needed. Right now, the concept, or the preliminary design, is that you could utilize the courtyard. And how many levels? 2 levels within the courtyard, and still allow for space to have natural light in those rooms. So that's one possibility. Once this is approved and it starts to get designed, they'll look at all the other possibilities and decide which one makes the most sense. But again, preliminarily, this one seems to be the one that does. And then regarding Brad Street, the ABECC, it needs a couple of support spaces, but mostly the gym, and that would go, this is where the preschool, this is the preschool, and this is the kindergarten portion of the building. This is the preschool playground right now. So that footprint would allow for a sufficiently sized gym, and you could move the existing preschool playground right here next to the kindergarten playground. And then the other 2 projects, the fire station number 2, again, where Salem Street and Johnson Street meet. It would be some living spaces, as Town Manager Melissa Rodriguez has explained. We have both male and female firefighters, but we don't have separate living accommodations, which you're supposed to have. That would allow them to accommodate that and add a bay for an ambulance, was it? And then the youth center, which is right across the street, you can see they would add what they're referring to as flex space that's needed at the youth center. So that's the projects that have, the school projects were recommended by the school committee in September, sent to the facilities master plan committee, which includes Lori Burzlaff, you met earlier. Steve Foster is our facilities manager for the town. Paul Hutchins is our, why do I always forget his title?
Chief Building Inspector.
Thank you. Myself, Lynn Savage is the town finance director, and Jim Stanford is the DPW, Public Works Director. So we're going to continue these forums, and it's great to have people come out. They're being taped for, I saw the one from last night, was already on YouTube, and I'm sure this will be available pretty quickly. So Atkinson last night, Franklin tonight. Next week we've got Kittredge in the middle school. We're going to do the senior center. We're going to do one at Town Hall as part of a select board meeting. We've got the ABECC on the 9th of November and the youth center on December 1st. And then, like I said, these are the ones to just let people know what these projects are all about. And then coming out of the holidays, we'll be talking about the funding and the timeline of the projects. And then this kind of just highlights that timeline. School committee made a recommendation. The facilities master plan committee is meeting now and has met and will continue to do so. And the December date's important because The likelihood is that we'll know by December. It could be as late as March, but the town manager indicated today that she's asked them to see if, it would be really helpful for us if you could make a decision by December whether or not Kittredge is going to be approved. So that would be extremely helpful for us. The public forums are occurring up until December 1st, this stage of them. The Master Planning Committee will continue to meet all the way up till March and maybe even beyond, but the warrant gets drawn in March, so that's why that date is there. We'll continue after the holidays from January to May, more public education support initiatives for the projects. That'll include messaging, Kim will be there, and then the public forums, specifically the funding plan. And then town meeting approval for the design of the first project/projects. There's no reason if the funding is available and depending on how the schedules work, and I'll ask these guys to talk about. One of the big questions that comes up is, how do you do a school project? You're educating students and you're doing construction. So I'm just gonna ask these guys, they've done hundreds of school projects. Every town does it and it happens. But what it does is, it means you might normally have an 18-month construction period, but you might have to break it up because of school and break it up into parts, so it takes longer, and that's gonna push out our timeline as well. But do you guys just wanna talk about what that means with regards to phasing?
So typically, the first thing we do is make sure that it's the construction process is a safe process. So students, teachers, parents are completely separated from the contractor. So that's the first and foremost thing. Then it's the educational delivery. So as Jim was saying, that the educational delivery is an important aspect of it. So we need to work with the district to make sure that the population is being educated while the construction is happening. So what that means is, there's only so much of the construction that you can do. So ideally, we'd like to get as much construction done because that shortens the time period, but those have to be weighed against the educational delivery. So in some cases, each project is going to be very different because some are larger additions than others. Like for example, the Franklin, has an addition in the back, so we need to look at how much can we take of the existing and the new construction, so that when a portion of the existing is done, you can take those students and put them into the new construction, and then you're going to renovate some more, and then you just go around the building and finish it off. That usually happens in 2 to 3 phases if it's renovated, but the most important piece is to completely separate access from the contractor and the parents and teachers and students, so there's no connection. But that's typically what happens. A small school project can take about 18 months, but with some phasing and more different pieces to that can go up as much as 30 months. But like I said, it depends on the specific project. Kittredge being, I think, the easiest example is that for the most part, the majority of the building can be built while the students are in the school, and then they move into the new school and then just demolish what's there and renovate the last few pieces. So that's the easiest one, but the other pieces, the other schools are a little more complicated, but those things will get fleshed out during the design process.
Dr. Gilligan reminded us last night that that's exactly what happened at the high school. Did I steal your thunder?
Well, no, you didn't steal my thunder, Dr. Bealey. But I was going to say, as superintendent, the number one is student safety. As someone who became superintendent right when we were finishing up the ABEC with construction trucks and different things finishing the site work, I became keenly aware of, that is a top priority. And then 1A, right behind it, is delivering an excellent education and not interrupting that. So these guys, again, they've done hundreds of projects. When I say hundreds, it's hundreds. And something like the Kittredge, in North Andover, I'm not sure how many were around, but I think I was vice principal, just turned vice principal. They built where the football field was the old high school. Students were in there until February break of 2004. And they took 3 PD days before February break, added those on, where students were out, and we moved all the students for those 3 days, the February break. Everyone got in the building. They tore the old building down. Then it took a little while for athletics, so athletics were you know, move to some different fields around town, but that would be an example of, you know, how they can get that done.
So it helps explain, we got used to, if you were following the first phase of the master plan, we got used to kind of design one year, and then the next year, construction of that one that was designed, and design of the next one, and kind of just going. First few definitely went that way. That's probably not going to be the case with this plan, because we're talking about multi-years in order to phase these projects and get them done properly, but safely, and still educate our students. So that's the timeline, and another purpose of tonight was just to allow you guys not only to inform you and help let you understand what's going on, but ask any questions that you might have.
Great. It was Phil Donahue, someone told me last night.
Yeah, Bill Donahue did that.
Dr. Mealy, you had mentioned last night, you did mention it tonight, that multiple schools had been included in our submission to the MSBA. If they have chosen Kittredge, or if they are contemplating Kittredge, are those other schools still on the list, or have they now been eliminated from the list?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, so Dr. Gilligan and I talked to a representative from SBA when we were submitting, because we submitted for the middle school, Kittredge, Atkinson, and Franklin. Dr. Gilligan, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, yeah, so we submitted all these projects, and, you know, right now, there were, and as you know, we've been submitting them for the middle school for several years. And it often takes many years to get into the queue. But what's called the core program at MSBA, I think they said they had 58 applications for the core program, and they had narrowed it down to 20. By no means does that mean they're inviting us into the program, but it's pretty exciting to be in that 20, and they're coming out this week to do a site visit. You know, so that's pretty exciting to move along. But it doesn't mean the others are out, but I wouldn't be optimistic, you know, at this time, Jim.
Well, it kind of does mean that they're out.
Yeah.
So after the conversation that we had with them, we were strategic about this, in that one of the 4 projects, Kittredge was the most costly and in the worst condition. So I kept using the expression, we were putting our worst foot forward, which made sense. And it looks like it's paid off, because it's made that first cut and the others did not. So it was definitely a strategic decision, and we're hopeful it pays off. Other questions?
Hi, Kristin Doggett here. I have purely selfish questions, trying to make sure I understand everything. I have a 2nd grader currently in Franklin, and then I will have I have a preschooler now, who then will be here in the year after next. So I guess I'm trying to understand the timeline and how this would, I guess I don't get a sense of when Franklin's project would potentially happen. If everything, I understand there's a lot of decisions and votes that have to happen, but what would be a best guess on when Franklin would start? And I'm just trying to get a sense of then where that would fall in line with my kids' education here.
Yeah, we anticipate that question, and I wish I had an answer for you right now. I think we'll have a better answer for you, certainly before town meeting. We'll have it coming back out of the holidays. We'll be addressing that. There's a few reasons, especially if approved, that Kittredge, it makes sense going first. One, being $30-something million total cost. If you leave it to the end, then you're subjecting it to inflation costs, and it costs a lot more near the end than some of the lower cost items. Also though, because we're proposing a 450 student school instead of the 230 or 40 that's there now, that builds some extra capacity in the district that will help us manage the other projects as well. So, like I said, I wish I could tell you right now, but it will certainly be before town meeting that we have that answer for you.
And so, just so I'm clear, because again, I'm trying to make sure I understand what each of these things mean. Kittredge is first. And
Possible.
so it would, well, I guess that's, and then that, no other construction will be happening if that's first, and then it would be another school next. Like, there obviously won't be simultaneous construction at any points. And, sorry, yeah, go ahead, answer that one. I just have one more.
That's okay. There could be. It's contingent upon what we can manage safely in continuing education, but also what we can fund.
Right.
Because the more that we can fund without having to go for an override or a debt exclusion, the better off we're going to be. And so if it means putting something off another year to do so, it just makes sense. So, like I said, that's the plan that we will be presenting in January and February.
So it's contingent upon funding from state and town approval?
Well, the MSBA for Kittredge is the only non-local funding
Okay.
that's involved.
Okay.
All the rest is local.
So the town has to obviously vote to approve the funding in the town, and then a year later approves the construction? I just want to understand the gap between
So-
those two decisions.
Right, normally what happens is in any given project, you will come to town meeting as part of the capital plan that year, you'll have design of a project.
Mhm.
And then the following year, because the design is going to tell you the construction costs.
Right.
And so the following year, you have the vote to approve the construction costs.
Okay, I'm going to ask a really annoying question. Why do we have to wait a full year? I mean, if something is, the design is approved, and God knows I know a little bit about construction stuff and know how much the cost can jump even in 1 year, why if this is such a big priority of the town, why can't decisions like that be moved for special votes earlier? Like, just, I mean, I'm naive to some of these details, but why does it have to wait a full year?
Yeah, I certainly don't want to, I would try to answer the question, but I am going to defer to our town manager.
Yeah,
She almost got out.
this is part of a big, long-term plan,
I know
over
it's
time,
complicated.
partnered together. You know, I have a son at the middle school. You know, they're not going to even crack a brick at the middle school there. But it's part of a bigger plan, long-term, and that's, it's been recommended to the Facilities Master Plan 2 committee, which will order it. The MSBA plays a role because of the funding piece, and then they'll come to town meeting to take a vote on the first step of the plan.
But more specifically, why do we have to wait for the construction?
Sure. So I think it's pretty much twofold. In my experience, if you appropriate the construction funding too soon, you usually end up having to come back to town meeting and ask for more money, which is pretty much the worst thing we want to do, right? So there's that. There is always a scenario where we could call a special town meeting. It usually costs about $15,000. We usually don't get as many people to come out, which can be really kind of detrimental to a project. And if you're doing a debt exclusion, you will have to then have an election. So it makes sense to kind of try to build the momentum around what people are used to so that they come out. I've been driving Laurie crazy because every day I'm running into her office with another scenario that I'm trying out, seeing how it will work. You know, we know that we have over the next 14 or so years, $73 million in debt capacity that's opening up from projects falling off, right? We're trying to figure out how we balance getting all of this work done while being respectful in the least burdensome to the taxpayers that we can, right? And so what we want to do is we want to have this be a win, right? We want to make this something everyone can get behind. And to do that, we have to do it in a really meaningful way. So we're getting there, and I'm hopeful that, you know, in the January timeframe, we're going to have a lot more information and be coming back to you with a timing plan.
And the other part, going back to what grade your students are in, your children are in, we're very sensitive to trying to have an impact on as many students as we can. And most of the scenarios have the middle school pretty close to up front, so that it impacts everybody. Michael?
I just want to add one thought that you hinted at, but I want to make more explicit, is that this is not necessarily a situation where like one thing happens and only that school benefits and then everyone else is waiting for their step, right? So if we rebuild Kittredge, we're doubling the size of Kittredge, probably more than doubling the size of Kittredge, at which point we have opened up a lot of space for our entire school system. So even though we have not necessarily changed the building here, we have changed its capacity, of the capacity of the whole school system, and we can redistribute to match that, so.
Well, so that's a question. Will there likely be redistribution of
Yeah.
kids from one school to another?
No, well, you know, when you look at something like the Kittredge School, for example, we want to minimize that impact. People who really want to be in the districts they're in. It's a possibility, but as Jim showed you in that graph of adding 35 students a year and the growth that we're having, you guys have seen all the construction going around town over the past couple of years, you know, and you've seen where we're at, you know, but with this projection now bringing 35 new students in a year, it gives us the ability, and the town manager, or Lori, knows the names a little bit better of the different projects for the future. So it gives us the ability to say, hey, this road that's brand new could go to the Kittredge School, or this, you know, these market rate condos or place could go to a school that's specific. So there's a lot of options when we get there. That's a little bit down the road, but it's certainly something we thought about, and we want to minimize that.
Yeah, I can tell you that of all the scenarios that we did look at, all the options, this one has the least amount. We were very sensitive, so it has the least amount of redistricting that would be required.
Lori, do you want to say anything about the projects coming up that you know of, the additional housing?
Well, there's really just the road across.
Yeah, just Royal Crest, we have Avalon Bay, we've got a bunch. I think you guys have seen, you know, in the works, and you've seen the ones that have gone up, so.
It's interesting with the developments because they tend to have a different impact on us. Some have very little impact, and what happens is people will drive by a development, or they'll hear about it and say, 160 units, you multiply that by 2 kids, that's 320 students that are coming to our schools. It's not how it works. Princeton development, if you're familiar with that, that's the one up off on 125 across from Lots of Pete's, if you know where Lots of Pete's is. We've got about 5 students that have come from there. It's because they're market rate with very few 3-bedroom apartments. Other developments that we are talking about, the Royal Crest development, the Avalon, you know, they might have a different mixture. They might have some 40B, so lower than market rate. They might have more 2 and 3-bedroom units. So they might end up producing more school-age children than other developments.
Those were also taken into consideration in the study session.
Yes, those were factored into our enrollment projections.
Jim, could you go back to the overview of Kittredge with
On the slide?
yeah.
So the picture, is that what you're looking for, the picture?
Right,
Yep.
so we're increasing this school by an awful lot. Are we increasing the parking?
So yeah, and it's funny you say that because I actually said to Al, I'm not too keen on the idea of having 2-way traffic through this. Maybe we would go around the building. So there's more, the green that you can see around the building, there's more land still on this site. So yes, we would have to, as part of the design, have enough parking. There's requirements for the amount of parking depending on the size of the school.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I just noticed, I think with all of your pictures, we haven't spoken about parking, and I just wanted to make sure that that was in the mix.
Absolutely. So when I was talking about the exterior, that includes paving, but also making sure that we have all the parking and handicap parking that's required of a building that size.
I have a second question. You know, we talk about making the space proper for 21st century learning, and I think what I heard you sort of define that as is the new types of services and such that we're providing to the kids. What I'm wondering is about technology, right? So there's a lot of infrastructure that we're building in, including electrical upgrades and such. And I don't know, you know, let's say this is done 10 years from now. 10 years ago, I never could have told you that we might be doing remote Zoom learning, right? Well, now we know, right? So what's it going to look like 10 years from now? I don't know, right? But I guess we should try and think about it. If, you know, I'm not saying that you haven't, but I just didn't see it in any of your slides, right? When you even spoke about what we want to provide and what we want to get out of giving our kids, new technology wasn't in there. And I'm not talking about buying the computers, but I'm talking about making the space agreeable to the technology. And I can't even explain what that looks like, right? But I think we need to think about it. Because if it does require more power, more electricity, rooms that can be flipped around, the way, anything like that, we will be remiss if we wake up 10 years from now and we're ill-equipped to handle any kind of technological change, which could already be present.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And part of the process for every single project is the initial design, and included in that will be IT, will be staff, educators, teachers, principals, of what the space at that time, because like you said, I remember when I first started here, that's great, Thompson has a computer lab. Does an elementary school need one now? Not anymore, right? And you're right about the infrastructure. We have to make sure, and some good things have come out of this pandemic. One of them being our ability to address some of those infrastructure needs. We have a lot more capacity than we did when this thing started. But we have to make sure we address those during these projects.
Okay, good. I mean, I didn't see it in any of your slides, and it really jumps out as something that's missing that we really cannot afford to ignore.
Yeah, I'll take this opportunity to solicit from anyone if you think something is missing, because we appreciate that feedback so that we can include it going forward, and we certainly will. But any other suggestions are welcome.
I was going to go in another topic, but I thought you were reaching.
No, I was just making a note.
Good. So I guess Stan's not here, right? So I have a pie in the sky idea. And I don't need to throw too much sand in the gears. But the library is also a place that basically is impossible to build upon. And I don't know if it might make sense to try and use our school renovation opportunity to build in basically a branch of the library, like a children's room, right? Like if we could, and Kittredge would be a great place, Atkinson would be a great place because of its proximity to Stevens. So Stevens has nowhere to go, and they're hurting for parking. So if we could build into one of these plans a branch, an elementary school branch, and that I think also, so that would free up space at Stevens, which I'm assuming they need, and they're probably going to need it in the future if they don't need it now. But then also it might make a lot of resource sharing, particularly with some of the staff, because I know that some of the library staff, basically shuttle between the schools, and so it's just an idea.
It's a great idea, and those kind of ideas are what we're talking about. It might not happen, but it's certainly worth considering and seeing if we can accommodate something like that.
Tim, some really great points. I'm glad you brought it up. I know we're trying to highlight what the real needs are, but this is a really important one, and I didn't know if FPG, if they wanted to add anything about the technology. It's certainly, I remember moving into the high school in 2004, and they had cable, and think about cable for an entire building, and then cable's really been gone for a while. When we moved into the admin building, there's no such thing as a cable wire anymore. So great points, well taken, and good feedback on it. I didn't know if PG, any of their projects want to add anything on this?
Yeah. So inherent in that discussion about 21st century schools, that's absolutely part of the educational planning process. When we go into detailed design, technology is a huge component. A lot of those spaces today are, have interactive whiteboards, they have breakout spaces. So these are all the types of spaces that we talk about when we discuss 21st century spaces. Media centers now, they're really changing. You know, they're not a place where you have a lot of books anymore. You know, you actually, you know, have computers. All the kids are typically one-to-one nowadays in a lot of the school systems. So that's part of the infrastructure design. It's not just electrical, it's really technology.
Thanks. I was going to say the same thing, that some people might think that a library is outdated, but that's not the case at all. In addition to being a library, we have the green screen so that the children can produce multimedia productions, and we have a place for them to do their robotics and that kind of learning. So they are multifunctional spaces in the 21st century.
Got another question back there, Dr. Bailey.
Oh.
So for reasons that are obvious, we've moved a lot of learning outside. And yes, we're in New England and our time to really be outside in good weather is short. But has there been any consideration to building some outdoor spaces? Like the quick thought is like, you know, concrete ground with like a hard top over it where we can get the kids out, where the teachers can jump outside for more outdoor learning throughout the year when it's like weather permitted, where it's not all inside all the time?
That has come up, yes. And as Al's saying, as part of the design phase, we will be talking about that, because if we haven't learned anything, we were fortunate that we were able to get the tents and have those. But if we've got something that is more permanent and useful in the same way, then by all means, let's take advantage of it. Great idea.
Other questions?
Another one.
I have like a selfish question. So my youngest is in 3rd grade. In your crystal ball, will she experience any of this greatness coming? Like, will middle school even be on her radar, or is she just?
So if she's into 3rd grade, I am certainly optimistic that she will see, there will be some impact for her, yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a long-term investment in the community. I mean, the participation last spring, and people like Michael Liss and the people on the subcommittee that, you know, work so hard on these recommendations, like, this will impact the community for 30, 40, 50 years to come. And that's why it's critical. I think, like, if we look at Facilities Master Phase 1, I think that started, Jim, probably roughly 2013. You know, and now it's 2021, and they're wrapping up the senior center project. You know, just kind of an example with that. But schools are a little bit different. But this also includes the fire station and the youth center as well.
And just going back to what I said earlier, we are very sensitive to wanting to have an impact on everybody from these projects. And so that's why the middle school is definitely in our scenarios up front.
You have another question? I'll just say something really quick.
So first of all, just thank you so much for being here. I mean, I think it's really important that we hear from people and get some good feedback. As I've just even heard you guys ask questions, it's triggered a number of different things in my head, and I've kind of made some notes here. But, you know, initial thoughts, I mean, I really liked your idea, Tim, of, you know, what would we do in terms of library, and is there a need for there to be a branch or something of that nature? So I think that that's pretty interesting, and the outdoor learning. Sorry, I don't know your name. But, you know, definitely, you know, something that we have used, and I think at Kittredge, I don't even know, probably about 6 or 8 years ago, we were trying to do some outdoor classrooms. And so we kind of built some of that space. I think that all of that kind of goes into the design pieces that are there. So it's good to kind of put things down on, you know, the table and ideas and all of those, because I think that's, you know, where we start to get more involvement as we build that forward. And then the other thing that I saw on the slide back, Jim, in terms of space, you can probably go to any of the schools, but you just go to one of them, for example, in terms of classroom spaces and what we were adding in. Keep going back, I think.
Oh, the space analysis?
Space analysis, yeah, sorry, it's a couple more, but, oh, there was one.
Let's go Franklin.
Franklin, yeah, let's do Franklin, because we're here. You know, I really, I think it's about 3 or 4 from the top there, right? The music and, you know, the arts and the performing arts things. I mean, those are things that, you know, when
when you get to the middle school and the high school, it's such a great part of the curriculum and all of that. And not all of our elementary schools really have the same amount of space that's there. So just seeing that space, in so many cases, doubling in our schools is just so fantastic and just really exciting to see that kind of come out. And I think as we move forward, this is a really diverse community, and I think that we have an opportunity to really let kids grow in all areas for that. And so when I look at, where those different pieces are, whether it's media or art or music, it's just really exciting. And I think I'm in the same boat. My kids will not see this. My youngest is in 8th grade along with Dr. Gilligan's, but that doesn't mean I'm still not, really excited about seeing this come through. So thank you so much for being here and asking those questions, because it's really triggering a lot of things as we get into the design piece. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited in having these forums because you guys do bring up some great ideas and some great points. I'm combining the two now and thinking that instead of being traditional, here's an opportunity to really be creative. And we've seen during the pandemic that we need to have those outside spaces. So let's have those outside spaces and make sure that they're covered, and they have access to our internet, and we can do so much more outdoors. We've seen it. The kids are willing to be out there and excited about it, and the teachers are as well. So, the design phase is a really exciting part of these projects.
Yeah, I'd echo Andrew's points. I couldn't have said it better myself. And, last night, it's great that the principals here, we had some staff too at one of the forums, and they had great questions because they're thinking about, well, are there going to be bathrooms in this vicinity? Some of the stuff that, they deal with on a, in terms of operating and functioning. So all the input is really terrific and gives us a lot of opportunity to think about and during the design process. And we've shared a librarian with the Stevens in the past, so, really, ideas like that are terrific.
Any other questions, comments? One thing I'll ask is, you're thinking if you have another one, if you do think of something else, please email me, get a message to us somehow of an idea that you have of, as we do more of these forums, what else, you've given us some ideas tonight, but what else might help the public understand these better, or promote them better.
And I just leave it on Jim. I don't know who said it, but they said, when's the best time to plant a tree? It's today. And this is exciting. This is very exciting for the community, our kids, in the future. So.
Well, thank you very much. If you think of any other questions, let us know.